Well, Exeter City finished 13th last season. Probably wasn't quite as straightforward and uneventful as that league position might suggest, because the Grecians, first of all, were top of the league in early September with, I think, 5 wins in their first six, and they were flying high. But then injuries struck, especially in key positions like the wing-back areas, and not really having an out-and-out centre forward was a massive problem for Gary Caldwell's side as they plummeted down the table. But it was possibly the 1-1 draw at Stevenage just before Christmas, where they came from behind and battled for a point with 10 men that maybe gave them the momentum to climb. And they were actually never really too far adrift because of the great start that they had. But they added really well in January, especially in the loan market, with the likes of Luke Harris coming in. But they've strengthened really well in January, and then in the second half of the season, they really pushed on and enjoyed almost playoff form for City. So, what's in store this campaign? They signed Josh McGuinness up top, so are they going to be even better than last season because they've got an out-and-out striker, which they sorely missed at times last year? Or with a strengthened league, are they in for another season of looking over their shoulders, shall we say? Very interesting to discuss, lots to talk about, and we'll get into it in this summer deep dive. Yes, welcome along to this EFL Debate Summer Deep Dive, one of 72 we're doing club by club across the EFL between mid-June and mid-July. Already the full set for League 2 uploaded to YouTube and on Spotify. Only missing Wrexham, I think, for the moment for League One as well, and obviously this podcast that we're coming on to. So get yourself subscribed to those. But for now, I'm delighted to be joined by Sam Parks, who's an Exeter City fan. Sam, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate you joining me this morning. What's in store? How are you feeling as an Exeter City fan going into this season?
Look, I'm really excited for this season. As you said, Gab, in the introduction, last season was kind of 3 seasons in one for us. Amazing start. We're top of the league sort of form, and we've got our hopes all the way up. And then injuries hit, a little bit of bad form and bad luck at the same time, and suddenly we came plummeting down the league. Never hit those relegation spots, but as you said, that January really, really changed us around. So I think Gary Caldwell and the boys will want to keep that going from that. We had an eight game unbeaten run coming to the end of the season, which was really nice, breaking club records. So I think Gary Caldwell's just going to want to keep that direction going, add to the club more with some new signings, some of which already happened, some of which we will look to make. But yeah, I think he's just want to keep that momentum going into the new season. And hopefully, City can get another really nice league position, and you never know what happens in League One, but staying up is the main priority, obviously.
Yeah, you mentioned never having been in the relegation zone, which again I think is a fantastic trait or accomplishment for a fan-owned club in League One, and I don't think that should be forgotten. Did you feel like in that time when the results weren't going quite as hoped, and there were some horror shows in there, there's no getting away from that, like the 7-0 at Bolton would certainly be one. But did you feel like some of the criticism got a little bit over the top sometimes, considering in the sort of broader scheme of things?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of panic amongst the fans. You can never blame the fans for stuff like this. Rightly so, you panic when your team is losing week in, week out. It was a really poor period for the club. But there was the club, they kept their faith with Gary Caldwell. They came out, they said that, and at the end of the day, it was the right decision looking back at it now. But there was a lot of panic. Me, myself, I was, attending games and seeing us losing the same way every week, mostly losing 1 or 2-0 after sloppy play and failing to take our chances. But, there was panic, but we were just saved that, well, luckily for us, there was teams worse us around our positioning, which kind of helped City out in the end. And then by the time January came, we strengthened and we were able to move on from that position. But it was quite unnerving. But I think not dropping into the relegation places is always a great thing in that battle. Staying clear, and keeping that mentality of we're not in the relegation places. We've just got to do our things right and hopefully find ourselves out of this situation.
Mm. So, a key part of Exeter City's model, Sam, is obviously selling players on for a profit, and that's how you've sustained yourselves, and that's going to be how you've got to try and bridge some of the financial disparity between yourselves and other clubs in League One. Who do you see at the moment in this squad as being your big assets where you could get a lot of money for this player?
We're kind of going through a little period at the moment where we haven't got the biggest assets. Last off season, we had kind of a mass exodus of academy players. You had Josh Key, Archie Collins, both going off for big fees. Just shy of £1 million for Archie Collins. Josh Key, his fees being decided this month actually in a tribunal. So hopefully we'll get good money from that. But there are some good players in there. Sonny Cox, who had a real resurgence after that loan spell at Yeovil last season. He looks a bright one. Not big money yet, but if he keeps developing and keeps pushing, we saw what happened with Ollie Watkins. Not to say that they're going to be the same player, but Exeter City Academy strikers normally do quite well. Harry Lee, another one, who had Premier League teams looking in for him, goalkeeper. Yeah, he signed a new contract. He's a good one. But the academy, we're in a little bit of a dry patch of players playing in the first team at the moment, unfortunately, that could go for big bucks. So I think it's moved a little bit to more smarter moves in the transfer market, which we have seen Exeter City be really good in the free transfer market the last couple of seasons. And I think Gary Caldwell understands that. He understands that the academy will come back and there will be players eventually in this first team. I think we're just going through a little transition 2 years of first batch of academy lot have gone. Next lot, we just need to bring them through and feed them back into the first team.
Is that a little bit of a concern for you, Sam? I don't know if that. I was thinking of Jake Richards, which is why I said the name Jake. I had that name on mind. Sam, is that because for me, I do understand how in such a brutal League One, where it's so competitive, it's really difficult to give players the right space. Maybe it was a little bit easier in League Two, where the level might have been a bit more forgiving, and you've got to get results short term. So I do really get that. And yet the other way of looking at it would be that because League One is so brutal, and because the financial climate of League One is so sort of intense or demanding, whatever the right word would be, it means I also think that means it's going to be more important for Exeter City to try and develop some of these players and hope that, for instance, a Jake Richards or a Sonny Cox or an Ed James coming through in defence can actually Borges as well can break through and earn you a 7-figure fee.
Yeah, I think it is really important. City have balanced it quite well in recent years. League One, League Two was obviously a much easier league to kind of get that balance. It's a little bit more forgiving League Two, especially when you're a team like Exeter City, who are always up near the top of League Two before we got promoted. But I think there will be opportunities this season. Disregarding the EFL trophy, I think Gary Caldwell will look to get these players in the league. We saw Sonny Cox for the second half of last season, back from Yeovil, really rejuvenated, grabbed 2 goals against Bolton in a 2-2 draw at home, and looks really comfortable, really sharp finishes. Pedro Borges got good game time as well in quite a few games towards the end of the season. So I think, Gary Caldwell, he likes youth. We saw that at the end of last season. But I think it's a fine balance at Exeter City between bringing these players through, which Caldwell and the board will be telling him, try and do this for financial security, and also remaining as competitive as they can with signings in the free transfer and the transfer market.
Yeah, it's not an easy balance to strike. So I don't envy Gary in that position, because I think it's really difficult to get the balance right. So, in terms of the squad, then, Sam, I mean, I've actually written the squad down. I started writing the squad down in the shape of a sort of 3-4-2-1, which is the formation you used most often last season. But I'm actually looking at it. You've got Sonny Cox, Milinet Jolly, Josh McGuinness, and Jay Bird
Mm.
there, who are all centre forwards. And I'm actually wondering whether it's going to be more like a 3-4-1-2 with just the one number 10 this season.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I think Gary's gone out. He's obviously last season we didn't have that experienced striker, unfortunately. Had James Scott, but he had a really poor season and unfortunately couldn't get settled down in Exeter. And obviously went back up to Scotland. So we were just left with Sonny Cox really. Um, but yeah, Josh McGuinness, a signing that could change that. Obviously an experienced striker. Um, hasn't been scoring bags loads of goals recently, but has been good for Wigan in the last couple of seasons.
Yeah.
A great pickup on a free, I think, brings loads of experience to a quite young squad. So no complaints there. But two sort of attacking midfielders has been Gary Caldwell's go-to, and it's worked. I just think it depends on where he's going to play Dimitri Mitchell. Myself, I think.
Oh, I had him pegged as a wing back, Sam.
Yeah, see, this is the interesting thing. Caldwell would kind of move him around. So he'd kind of move him from, an out and out winger, kind of coming in, kind of like that attacking midfielder role, to move him to a left back. So he's one of those players who's really, really versatile for Gary Caldwell, and Gary knows that. And yeah, it's going to be a really interesting one. But I could see a strike force of McGuinness and Sonny Cox. I think that would be a really good one, balancing that experience and youth as well. And there's good attacking midfielder options. Obviously, Jack Aitchison tied down for another year. He was good last season. You got Yannick Wildshut in there as well, Caleb Watts. There's lots of options for City, and I think that's what we lacked last season. So having these attacking options in abundance is really something that I'm enjoying as a City fan.
Harry Lee, Sam. This is somebody who's clearly a prodigiously talented goalkeeper. This is somebody who I almost think if Harry Lee had gone to Chelsea, 3 years ago, and you were getting him on loan, you'd almost think, wow, we've got him on loan, and you've got him permanently. So I do wonder. There is part of me that wonders whether actually, rather than go, I think you've been linked with Joe Whitworth at Crystal Palace, but I am almost wondering why not go for somebody like Harry Lee, because the rewards of him having a great individual season are massive financially compared to getting someone on loan who might be at a similar ability anyway. So that's what I'm wondering. If Harry Lee has a great pre-season, could things open up for him?
Yeah, look, the thing around City fans, we see Harry Lee. We were talking earlier about the academy sort of prodigies. Harry Lee is the one at City fans, for City fans at the moment. Just signed a new contract extension, which is really nice to have him back. But 19, he looks really, really good. Obviously, last season probably wasn't the season to get him in. January he was at the club. Obviously, we were in a lot of trouble there, and you want a more experienced, more resolute goalkeeper, which is where Sinisalo came in and had an
Yeah,
unbelievable season.
sure.
And then he broke his arm, Harry Lee. So it was a tough one for him last season. But I think if he has a great preseason, and maybe start him in the opening few games of the season and look to see where it goes from there. Joe Whitworth, an interesting one, a few years older than Harry Lee, but I understand your point. I really do. He
I think
looks,
he's only a couple of years older than
yeah,
Harry
I
Lee,
think he's
though, Sam. So
21, 22.
yeah, so it's whether you want to. I mean, it's not like he's had lots of. I don't think he's had
Mm.
lots of first team experience anyway. So I don't know. I'm actually thinking maybe Harry Lee at least give him the space to be the number one. Yeah, like you say, start the season.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. It's a very big call for Gary Caldwell. Obviously, he's got Sean McDonald there, which is great for you've got a bit of a mentor. You've got a mentor. I know Sinisalo said that was really good last year. The goalkeeping setup at Exeter City. So maybe get Harry Lee on a sort of similar path. I think it's a really interesting one, and I wouldn't be against him starting the first few games of the season. Just see how they go. See how he faces to top League One teams. So yeah, I think Harry Lee a real prodigy in this team, and again, it's Gary Caldwell trying to find that balance between start the youth, develop the youth, and
Mhm.
just solid League One performances.
Yeah, exactly. It's a tough call, but I'd like to see Harry Lee get a big chance. So the defence then, Sam. Pierce Sweeney is one who I think has been an incredible servant to Exeter City. He's the kind of person that you'd want associated with your football club because he clearly goes above and beyond with community causes and is clearly a great influence on the players. At the same time, if I'm thinking of a League One first 11, I think Pierce might be a little bit error prone and could struggle with the pace of League One. And I'm a little bit apprehensive about him at this level. Wondering how you're feeling.
Yeah, I'm in the same sort of boat. Sweens has been an unbelievable servant for the club. Signed that new contract. He'll be at the club over 10 years, come the end of this season, which is an unbelievable feat these days at an EFL level. So he's really just embodies what the club's about, Pierce Sweeney, and a servant to the club is the best way of saying it. But I get what you mean. He's not really the most agile on the ball. He's not really that ball playing centre back that you want. And I understand against the bigger teams, he may come a bit of a cropper in League One. But I think there are defenders who Gary will look to start with. Will Aimson being one of them. He really came into his own, came over that criticism mid-season and looked really good at the end of last season.
Yeah.
Czech Diabate, another one who signed a
Do
new
you know what,
contract.
Sam? I absolutely love Czech Diabate in League One. I thought he was absolutely amazing, and then he's had a couple of big injuries that just seem to have knocked him off course a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, I think Czech's a really, really interesting one. He's only 22. He looks really, really good. He's got a really good build, really strong in the air, and also looks quite good on the ball as well. Czech does. So I'd love to see him chucked in the middle of that defence, to be honest, with Will Aimson. Jack Fitzwater, you got the likes of him as well. He had a tough season last season with injury. So him coming back into the four is quite good. And then obviously you got Ben Perrington as either left back or left centre back. So there's experience in there, but I still feel like you need a few additions, mainly on that left side of the defence, because Zach Jules leaving, Alex Hartridge leaving. Exeter still need to sort of make, in my opinion, that solid left centre back signing if they're going to play an effective back three in League One.
Will Aimson, Sam, but City's the best defender for you?
Yeah, I would say coming off the back of our season, City's best defender. I know he came under a lot of criticism last season when we were going through that poor spell, and but no, all credit to him as a player and as a person. Really, he took that criticism on board, and he's churned out some really good performances and added a few goals to his game at the end of last season. So yeah, going into this season, I'm looking forward to having him in that back line, and I think probably he's our best centre back.
So you've said, Sam, that you think City need at least another couple of defenders. And my sort of slight question mark over that is you've got Ben Perrington there, you've got Will Aimson, you've got Jack Fitzwater, you've got Pierce Sweeney, and you've got Czech Diabate. So that's 5 defenders there. And you've got Ed James, who's coming through, who's supposed to be really talented as well. So if you bring in another couple of defenders, does that risk blocking the pathway for Ed James unless you offload one of the players that I've just mentioned?
Yeah, I don't think any of those are going to leave. They're all tied down. I don't think we're going to see any of those leaving. I just think, maybe not a couple, maybe just one solid left-sided centre back to replace the outgoing, as in Zach Jules, who obviously signed for Rotherham, was really, really good for us last season. It's a shame to see him leave, but yeah, I think just one little addition on that left centre back role, give a bit of cover to Ben Perrington because he's our only sort of out and out left sided centre back at the moment. Just that little bit of cover would be quite nice, and I think that will leave you sort of balance that gives Ed James possible opportunities, but also gives you some solid cover on that position to a League One standard.
But I hear what you're saying. But then, if we're thinking of City from a developmental model where you want to give these players a pathways where they might play a bit of league football, if you've got 2 players for each position, then it's very difficult. Whereas if you've got, say, 4 or 5 defenders and some of them can play a couple of parts of the back three, for instance, Will Aimson can play right centre back or middle centre back. Then actually that means that there's a bit more scope for someone like, I'm not sure. Ed James seems to be one of the most talented youth players at the club. So you've got Harry Lee, who we've mentioned. You've got Sonny Cox there. You've got Jake Richards, and I think after that you are at somebody like Ed James. So are you going to loan out Ed James and give him because again, if he's seventh choice centre back, I just don't think he's going to get. I don't think he's going to get the opportunities.
Yeah, I think you go down to seven. He's alone is going to be the option for him, but it's an interesting one. I think if he stays sort of fifth, sixth choice centre back, I could see him getting opportunities. You know, you got the EFL Cup, FA Cup games early on in the season, Carabao as well. So I think if you give him that sixth centre back role, which could be a good idea, I think that is really good to get that experience. You know, he's 19, plenty of experienced players in there with him that he could learn off as well. I think there is opportunities for him to play that left centre back role or even the central centre back role. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting one. What Gary Caldwell will do, I'm not too sure,
Mhm.
but it would be really nice to see Ed James get that opportunity and hopefully grasp it with two hands.
Yeah, fingers crossed, and yeah, good luck to the lad. The wing back spots look pretty good in terms of competition. I don't know how you're feeling, Sam, but I tend to think Ilmari Niskanen's a pretty steady option as a wing back. You've also brought in Macmillan, who now did he get into the Scottish Championship Team of the Year? I think I'm right in saying that. Speaking to Dave the Grecian the other night. And then you've got Dimitri Mitchell, who could play left wing back, although he could actually play on the other side. And you've also got Vincent Harper, who again another season for him. He's already had a year under his belt at this level, and he's played a few games, so he could be coming on as well. So for me, those wing back areas look pretty strong.
Yeah, really, really happy with those wing back positions. I think Gary's strengthened really well in there. Jack McMillan, a really good right back. As you said, Scottish team of the season, looks really, really strong and offers that kind of competition to Amari Niskanen, which is really nice. Niskanen obviously had a really good season. Injured when we were a bit having that dry period in sort of
Mm.
November, December, but he was part of the resurgence, came back really strong. Um,
Underrated for you, Ilmari Niskanen?
yeah, I think I would say he is quite underrated. I think quite a lot of fans get a little bit frustrated at his lack of end product sometimes in front of goal. But at the end of the day, as a right wing back, I think he does his job really well defensively and going forward to support the attacks, put crosses on. Obviously, there's places he can improve, and hopefully the coaching staff will help him to do that. But
Mhm.
yeah, he's really underrated. I think he's a solid starting right wing back in League One.
Mm. Yeah,
And
and hopefully Jack McMillan can be that addition that you're hoping
mm,
for. Talk to me about Dimitri Mitchell. Then we've spoken about him earlier. Do you think he's going to be one of City's best players this season?
yeah, without a doubt, he was an unbelievable player for that first sort of 2-3 months up until he got injured against Middlesbrough in the EFL Cup. He scored the winner when we beat Luton. Really, really good player. Good on the ball, can shoot, can cross, great dribbling skills as well. I think for us to keep him in League One for another season is really, really good work by the club, and you've got to give credit to Gary Caldwell and for keeping on to him. A
Mm,
really good player. Comes with bags of experience as well, coming through, Manchester United.
mm,
So for him to be starting sort of left wing back and have a player like Vince Harper who is a little bit more raw, just come out of non-league, only just done his first season in the EFL. I think
mm,
that's a perfect partnership for them to learn off each other.
mm. Yeah, absolutely. Vince Harper looks like he's a real athlete as well. That he can get up and down, which I always like in a wing back.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Vincent Harper. Really, really fast, up and down that line really quickly. He's got his end product to work on, but when you've got someone like Dimitri Mitchell who's worked on that end product, can shoot and cross really well, I think is a perfect mentor for Vince Harper, who looked really bright last season and
Mm,
definitely didn't shy away from that starting role when it was given to him. So I think he's one to look out for this season, Vincent Harper,
mm.
and hopefully he'll build on his successes last season.
Yeah, absolutely. After jumping up 2 leagues as well. So, even just competing in League One was a big achievement because that was a big step up for him. So, hopefully, this could be a great year for him. Central midfield then is another area I'm quite excited about, Sam,
Mm,
because Jake Richards, he's going to sure. Well, it's inevitable, really, that he's going to be offered his first professional contract where he turned 17. It almost feels like he's ahead of that stage, even
mm.
though he's behind it, if that makes sense. But he's a prodigious talent. Clearly, you've got Reece Cole in there, who I think your fans are very big on. You've got Ryan Woods bringing that experience. You've got Borges as well, and Ed Francis coming in from Gateshead. So for me, that looks like a really exciting area.
Yeah, I think midfield was one of the strengths of our squad last season. We had Tom Carroll in there, who's now just gone to MK Dons,
Mm-hmm.
which is fair enough. But Gary strengthened it really well. Ryan Wood's the one that really stands out to me in that lot, and I think was a great addition. The loan spell in January couldn't have gone better for Ryan. We only lost 3 times when he played in the squad from January, which is that's playoff sort of form, which is unbelievable. So to get him back on a free as well, 2-year deal, a
And
really
also this is somebody, Sam, who it's not like he's ever really relied on pace to have the career he's had. And when Brentford were this really exciting side in the Championship that was sort of just missing out on the
mm,
playoffs, but developing so many players. I spoke to Brentford fans who were saying that Ryan Woods was the absolute engine of that team. It's like they developed players like Jota, who got sold on, and other really good attacking players. But Ryan Woods was the heartbeat of that side. I've seen him go to Villa Park and absolutely play Villa off the park. So this is a really good footballer, and I think the experience that he brings, he's still got a bit of energy about him as well. He's only, 31, 32, something like that. It's not like he's a veteran. So for Exeter City to have Ryan Woods in the centre of midfield, I think is outstanding after the Championship career that he's had. So I'm really excited to see how he can sort of rub off on the likes of Reece Cole and Jake Richards and Borges.
yeah, I think he's just very strong on the ball, very strong on the tackle. He'll do the dirty work. He'll be the engine, and that's perfect when you've got your players sort of like your well, you've got Ed Francis in there now as well. But when you've got your 16-year-old Jake Richards, if he gets given that opportunity, when he gets that opportunity, really good for him because he knows he has that solid base behind him
Mm,
of of experienced midfielders. Whether he's in there with Reece Cole, whether he's in there with Ryan Woods, he's got that experienced, solid midfield in there with him, so he can go and flourish and he can do his thing, which is really, really reassuring as a 16-year-old coming into the squad.
mm.
Um, so yeah, that's really exciting, I think. And I think having someone like you said, the career Woods has had in the Championship is unbelievable, and playing alongside him is perfect for your Pedro Borges, your Jake Richards. They learn off this solid player in the field. They see what he does in games in crucial moments, and they learn off him. And I think it's a perfect mix both on and off the field for the Grecians.
Mm. So if we're looking at the dynamic of City's midfield this season, are we looking at Ryan Woods being your 6, maybe Reece Cole being your 8, and possibly Jack Aitchison being your 10?
Yeah, I think that's what I think I'd personally like to see. I think that's what happened in that period in January through to May, April, where it really, really worked. It was either Tom Carroll was in there instead. But yeah, Reece Cole would have to be the 8 in my opinion. The 6, interesting one because Ed Francis has just come in.
Mm.
He can play 6, and he looks a really bright spark coming out of the National League. Obviously
Mhm.
played a massive part in Notts County getting promoted from the National League 2 seasons ago, um, and then obviously off a really good season at Gateshead. So
Mm.
I think you've got lots of versatile options in here, and I think that's what Gary Caldwell would
Yeah.
quite like going into the season. So I'm
Sam,
interested.
Ed Francis actually, I think I'm right in saying Ed Francis has also played left back in his career. So I'm actually wondering if he could be a cover for option for Ben. I'm not certain about this, or
Hmm.
I've not done enough research on him to know for certain, but I do wonder if he could be a sort of cover left centre back option for Ben Purrington because I think he has played left back before. So
Yeah, interesting. I didn't know that. Can't say I've done
that,
that depth of research.
yeah.
But yeah, again, if he has it, it's proves another versatile, young,
Mm,
but with a good amount of games under his belt, kind of signing for Gary Caldwell. So yeah, he's an exciting one to watch.
mm.
And give Ryan Woods a bit of competition in hopefully that sixth role.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk to me about Reece Cole then, Sam. What was it about him that got is it the Cider Army that City fans call themselves, or is that Bristol City? Or do
That's
you,
Bristol City. We're sort of the red and white army
the
if we're
Red and
going
White?
by
Okay,
armies.
what is it
But
about the Red and White Army that's got you on your feet?
it's just, he's a good passer of the ball, but for me, it's the late runs into the box. We'll have attacking wing backs going down the side, and Reece is always that really good at that late run into the box, especially in the second half of the season. They'd pick him out, and he 9 times out of them finish. He did it against Burton. He did it. He did it against Carlisle. He does it against quite a lot of teams. It's just that
League
late
One
run into the
Lampard.
box. The League One Lampard. Late run into the box, really good finishing, and he can strike a ball as well. He scored a few free kicks last season, one against Peterborough. So yeah, he's just a really, really clinical sort of midfielder and one of those that you want on your team. And he showed up last season. I think City fans really, really love the bloke.
Brilliant. So Jake Richards then, Sam, if he comes into the team at all next season in terms of starts, which again he's only going to be 17 next season, but would you say he'd be one to come in for Ryan Woods, or be more likely Reece Cole, or would he even play as one of one or two number 10s? Do you think?
I think his sort of position is probably going to be in for that Reece Cole position if he's going to
Okay.
get any minutes next season. I think I think Gary won't sacrifice Ryan Woods, and if he does, it'll probably be for Ed Francis. You're out and out number
Mm.
sixes, experience. Ed Francis in the National League, Ryan Woods in the Championship, more experienced players. But yeah, I think it could be in that sort of number
Mm.
8 role. You've got Reece Cole in there, but
Yeah.
Pedro Borges, Jake Richards, there's opportunities to come in, get that
Yeah.
rotation, and
I
start
was
in
going
that
to ask you actually,
role.
Sam, because Ryan Trevitt also played the eight role in the first half of last season, and I'm wondering, do you think Reece Cole has got the same sort of dynamism that we saw from someone like Ryan Trevitt in terms of being able to play a bit box to box?
Yeah, I think Reece does. I think Trevitt was an unbelievable player.
Mm,
And it was a real shame when he got injured. I think we'd all love to have him back on loan
mm,
down here. He was absolute dynamite.
mm.
But yeah, I think they show that similar sort of dynamism. Um, but yeah, they're both kind of box to box, but also like to be in that attacking third. They'll shoot when the option's on. They have a really good strike on them. I think that is why City fans sort of like Reece so much. He has that edge to him. He has
Mhm.
that sort of box to box. He can get the job done all over the pitch. So I think yeah, it's a really good comparison, and it'd be really good if Jake Richards could learn a few from them and become that sort of player.
Seen much of Pedro Borges, Sam?
A little bit, mostly coming off the bench, no real starts. I saw quite a lot of him the end of our first season in League One. So
Mhm.
you're looking 2 seasons ago now, when we were all but hosed. So yeah, he looks good on the ball. Another strong midfielder. I think he could play that 8 role
Strong as
really
in physical,
nicely.
or strong as in
Just passing, look quite
right?
confident.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, another really interesting one coming out of the academy. Obviously, I think he's in that stage where he's too good for a loan spell out to the National League, sort of south at the moment, but could really do a job in sort of League Two at the moment. So
Okay.
he'll be an interesting one to see if he
I
gets
mean, if he
some
could,
game
Sam,
time.
if he could do a job in League Two, do you not think that
Mm,
it's actually worth at that point having him as part of the squad in League One? Because that's kind of how. Because
mm,
what you want to do is we can't predict how some of these players are going to develop. So we could be talking about Pedro Borges in 12 months' time as being this massive next seven-figure asset. So we just don't know. But what you want to do is at least have the door open so that if this player develops ahead of schedule or a little bit quicker than we're expecting, then you've got the space for them to do that, and you give yourselves that flexibility. So for me, that's going to be really important, and I hope that you can do that with both Jake Richards and Pedro Borges, whilst also having enough of the proven options like Reece Cole, Ryan Woods, and Ed Francis where you need them. So I'm liking the look of the balance of the midfield at the moment.
Yeah, me too. I think, you've hit the nail on the head there. It's a really fine balance between experience, which we've got, and then youth, which we've got as well. And I think Gary's just got to find those opportunities where he can get Pedro Borges in the starting 11, or even give Jake Richards a chance. So it's exciting, and it's an exciting conundrum to have, I think, as a City fan. But I think we've got to make sure that talent doesn't become wasted, and that we continue to develop and hopefully, gain some seven-figure assets.
Jack Aitchison, Sam, talk to me about his 23-24 season. How would you describe it?
Yeah, I think he's a player who thrives off other players playing well in their position. When he was in that midfield, sort of with Reece Cole, with Ryan Woods, and they were playing well, he'd also play well. He's one of those players that, sparks these kind of connections on the pitch, and when other players playing well, he plays well alongside them. So he had spells where he was really good. February he had a really good spell, scored against Barnsley away, but really strong. He grabbed some important goals last season, and I'm really glad to see him sign another contract extension to tie him up for 2 years. So I think as a number 10 with that strong base behind him that we're kind of expecting in Cole and Woods, I think it's going to be a really productive season for Jack.
Do you think he's going to play better as one of 2 10s, or could he do it as a single 10?
I think it's a tough one. I think I'd quite like to see him in the two tens role, because he's a smaller lad. He's not really your sort of imposing larger number 10. He's obviously a bit of support could be good for him in that sort of terms, but
Yeah.
I think a lot of it depends on who's behind him. I think there'd be a lot of responsibility on him just himself to supply two strikers if they're in front of him, which is why I think Gary will probably start off with the 2 10s.
Interesting, because I'm also wondering though, Sam, if it could help somebody like Jack Aitchison if you've got McGuinness occupying defenders,
Yeah.
because as much as Sonny Cox is clearly a prodigious talent and one of the most exciting ones you've got at St James's, I can't imagine, maybe you'll tell me I'm wrong, but I can't imagine Sonny Cox occupying defenders in an obvious physical sense in terms of pace or in terms of strength, maybe. So whereas I think McGuinness has that real industry about him, that physicality. So I'm actually wondering if you play Cox and McGuinness as a front two, then actually, on the one hand, Aitchison is the sole 10, so he's going to be he might be more of a marked man, but he also might be less marked man because he's got two strikers ahead of him that are actually sort of taking people away and occupying defenders.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting sort of conundrum. I think Josh McGuinness obviously is that big striker, draws defenders away, makes these sort of runs. He's very, very experienced at doing that sort of thing. Whereas, he pairs Sonny Cox quite perfectly on paper, to be honest, because Sonny Cox is a much more nimble striker. He gets these sort of runs in behind. He's more of like a fox in the box sort of striker, Sonny Cox, who can finish really nicely when he is in
Or a
those
Cox in the box.
opportunities. Yeah, Cox in the box. So yeah, he's sort of that finish your chances off, runs in behind, players like that. So I think if you've got McGuinness, as you said, occupying that space, maybe occupying your more experienced defender, your bigger defender, and Cox can make those runs in behind. Hopefully, with the likes of Jack Aitchison, he'll be able to either get a bit of space, work something himself, or find that pass in behind. So I think it's a really, really interesting one, and it gives you the option of one game you could start with 2 10s, not working, move it up into two strikers. So it gives a lot of fluidity in attack that Exeter lacked last season, I think.
Yeah. Caleb Watts, Sam, where do you think he's at with his development? And I'm also wondering, in terms of other attacking midfielders, while we're on that, Tom Dean, could he come into the equation next season, or is he looking more like a local? Is he more at a local loan out sort of stage?
I think he's in a bit of a lone stage. I think Tom
Okay.
Dean. I don't think he'll get a sniff in just yet. I think Mitch Beardmore's the one in the academy who's most likely to get a look in that sort of cam role if he's going to get
Okay.
time this season. But you've got Yannick Wildschut in there, another experienced sort of 10, can play on the wing as well, who look really bright and brings that experience. But Caleb Watts is the really interesting one, I think, to me and most City fans. It's a very interesting sort of conundrum. He was bright on spells, bright when he came in, but obviously a very injury hit player. He's still very young, tied up on a contract to January. So he's kind of one of those players where we have no idea what we're going to get from him. If he comes into the side and strings together some good performances, then this conversation could be completely different. But
Mm.
Gary obviously sees something, and I think he's very young. He looks dynamic, and if he can just keep that injury away and get a lot of games under his belt, it'll be really really interesting.
Mm. Milanic Jolly, Sam. I think it was a big step up for him because I think I'm right in saying he was stepping up from non-league football, wasn't he? Is that right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, what do you think's in store for him for this season? Do you think he's going to be better for that bedding in period?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see Millie Ali back. Came up from Halifax in January, signed him on a 3-year contract, and he looked really bright the last sort of 4 or 5 games of the season. I think he grabbed like 4 goals in 5 games to close the season off. So yeah, I think he's a real bright spark. He's another sort of younger striker, but he's kind of bullish. He's more strength in the box, will win aerial battles, will shove your defenders off the ball, and he again another really smart purchase because he's the opposite of what Sonny Cox gives you, and there's that possibility for a pairing together. So,
Mm.
but yeah, out of all the strikers, I'm really excited to see Millie Ali back. He looks really dynamic, sort of a player we've missed since Nombe left last summer.
Mm.
So I think yeah, Millie Ali is my one to watch in that striking position.
Exciting, yeah, because you've also signed Jay Bird as well, who's I think Gary's followed quite closely from his time in Scotland.
Yeah, Jay Bird, another one that Gary said will take a bit of time to get up and running and up to speed, but it just represents another option there. And if the scouting team have seen him up in Scotland and playing well, our signings from up there normally tend to do quite well. So yeah, another just interesting option, and I'm sure Gary will have a plan. But yeah, it looks like a risk-free signing of a reasonably young player. So yeah, you can't complain really.
Mm. So, expectations for the season then, Sam. Instinctively, as always, you want to try and progress from last season. I think that would mean a top half finish this year. I think saying we've got to finish in the top half or it's a failure would be a bit of a step because of how competitive the league is and how difficult it is for fan owned clubs. So is it just a case of survival, or would avoiding a relegation battle be a good season for Exeter City whilst maybe developing some of those young players that we've spoken about?
Yeah, I think baseline, lowest expectations stay up in the league. I
Mhm.
think that's the one that City have to box off, get that done. Um, but I think progressing players. I think Gary will look to build, but if we had another season where we finished sort of where we are at the moment, 13th place, comfortably mid-table, getting some good results in there, I think all City fans would be really really happy. That you never know what will happen. Maybe we progress further, but I think I'd be really happy, and I think most City fans would be really happy with a similar pace season, developing our players, give us some really exciting moments again, and yeah, I think that would be really good. But if progression comes, then I don't think anyone's going to complain.
What would be the reason, Sam, to believe that Exeter City can? What would be the biggest reason, should I say, to believe that Exeter City can meet their expectations this season?
We've got a really really strong midfield, a really good mix of experience, creativity, and youth in there as well. We've got strikers that we lacked last season. You've got depth in that striking department, whether it be youth, experience, and all different types of strikers. I just think we've got built a nicely rounded squad is coming together down here in Exeter. A great mix of experience, academy prospects, and youth prospects from elsewhere. I just think Gary's making a really well-rounded and dynamic squad that we lacked in periods last season.
What's your biggest reason for doubt?
Biggest reason for doubt would probably be the defensive department, only because I've seen players in there make a few mistakes here and there.
Mhm.
But it's not a major reason for doubt. It's just a few mistakes. I know a few of those players can let mistakes creep into their game, which we saw sometimes during that January period when things were going down. Mistakes were getting into players. That would be my only reason for doubt, really, in this squad. But hopefully, we don't have a period like that, and that doubt can stay out of the minds of defenders and they remain solid.
Give me a number then, Sam, between 1 and 10 to denote your level of optimism for the season ahead.
I'll give it about an 8. I'll give it an 8. Very, very optimistic with the players in there. I think it's going to be a good season ahead for Exeter City, and I hope not to jinx it, but I'm very excited for August.
Fancy giving me a prediction then?
Yeah, I'm going. Go on. I'll say 12.
12. There we go.
I'll say 12. I'll say 12.
Another position higher. Brilliant. Well, listen, Sam, thanks so much for your insight. Really appreciate your time joining me this morning. So yeah, you can go and follow Sam at Sam Parks with 4 S's, and you can subscribe to EFL Debate on YouTube and on Spotify. If you've watched this episode on YouTube, feel free to drop us in a comment and let me know how you think City are going to do this season. If you've enjoyed this episode on Spotify, please leave us a review because that would help us out a lot. And we'll see you again here on EFL Debate for another summer deep dive very soon.